So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you may be watching this. I'm Jamie Muller, and this is the Grad Connection, where my goal is to see graduate students not just survive, but to thrive in graduate school. As I said in last week's video, what I thought about doing this week was kind of getting away from talking about the discipline and those kinds of things for a little bit, and talking about some other content pieces. And one of the very first things that came to mind was an article that I wrote several years ago on LinkedIn. It's more of a long form article. And I know a lot of people stray away from that, particularly in the days of video and TikTok and all that kind of stuff, just quick snippets. So I thought I'd go over that. And so as I was reading through it, I thought, well, this is going to be quick and simple. And then all of a sudden, all these thoughts started coming to me, and I started adding stuff to it. So hopefully, you find value in this. And really, what I'm talking about today is developing a mentoring team. So where this originally came from was a podcast called Coaching for Leaders by Dave Stachowiak. It's actually episode 437 if you want to go back and listen to it. It was an interview he was doing with Art Markham. And, if you don't subscribe to Coaching for Leaders, I'd encourage you. I will leave a link for that down in the notes section related to this, or the description related to this video. But anyway, so let's talk about it. So mentor relationships are kind of like any other relationships. I mean, they work best when two people choose to enter into the relationship and kind of understand kind of the parameters of that relationship. But generally, arranged mentorship types of things don't work very well for a variety of reasons. It may be a mismatch of personalities, of styles, of needs from the mentee to the mentor. The mentor may not want to mentor. I mean, you can't make somebody want to mentor, just like you can't make someone to want to care. And so a lot of times arranged or formal mentoring programs just don't work really well. And there are, like I said, a variety of reasons. So, and the other thing I would say is seldom can one person fulfill, and that's really what this is about, seldom can one person typically fulfill all the roles or things that you would need out of a mentoring relationship. Usually people are focused in one particular area, and that's really what my article focused on, is kind of looking at people from the standpoint of, what do they bring to the table? Because essentially, if you're looking just to one person as a mentor, essentially you've got all your eggs in one basket, proverbially, and it really becomes almost like too much demand. It's almost like your expectations are really kind of out of whack if you think one mentor is going to be able to meet everything that you need. So in my opinion, each person should actually strive to have, a team of mentors. And so that's what the article was about. And so I'll kind of rehash that a little bit. So, some roles that I see, so first of all, how do you know what you need? So there's possible roles, and these are some of the ones that I came up with, and this was after listening to that podcast. But number one, and I'm thinking about graduate students, right? So you really need a superstar or a rock star, right? Somebody you can aspire to be like, someone that's highly successful and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times rock stars don't have a lot of time for you. You can kind of look at them and aspire to them, but your connection with them may be somewhat limited just because they're so busy, and that kind of thing. Another role that you might need is I believe you need is a coach, right? Someone who can encourage, someone who can comfort, someone who can exhort, and most importantly, somebody who can put their foot up your butt when you need it and just tell you the God's honest truth. It's really just a person. A coach, in my opinion, is a person who says the right thing at the right time to get you to nudge you in the right direction. I mean, they don't obviously force you, but they try to nudge and propel you forward, and they really do care about you. And so there's a coach who usually has your best interests at heart. Another role would be a connector. That's a person who has lots of connections and kind of, can connect you with other people. They may not be strong in other areas, but they have a wide network of people that they know, and then they can just basically connect you to others. You need a navigator, someone who can help you guide you through options, or to help you talk through options to try to figure out where you need to go and what you need to do relative to graduate school, particularly. Right? Someone to help you weed through all the policies and procedures and that kind of stuff. And then lastly, and this is something that I had added to the podcast, but I really think you need to have an advocate. An advocate is more than just a mentor. An advocate, it's like mentorship is where, to me, a mentee is drawing information from a mentor. Obviously, they're putting, it's kind of like the mentor is reacting to the mentee's, the draw of the mentee, or what the mentee's drawing from the mentor. An advocate, in my opinion, is more active, takes a more active role, and basically it's someone who actively talks you up, actively tries to connect you with opportunities and create opportunities for you. Ultimately, it's almost like, they don't just show you where the door is. They kind of open the door and kind of say, do you want to enter? So they advocate on your behalf, both in your presence and when you're not in their presence, right? So they're an advocate for you, and we all need advocates. So to me, these are kind of things that I thought of relative to mentoring. Now, kind of the role that I serve, I kind of feel like I fit in that navigator advocate role. Um, I aspire to be more coach-like, but I don't know to what degree I maybe do that or don't do that. But nevertheless, I can see that every person basically has a different role that they can fill, and just assuming that one person, like if you're expecting a superstar to be a coach, they may not have that skill. They may not care to have that skill. They may care for you to a certain degree, but they may not know you well enough or know your situation well enough or have enough time to garner either or to learn about either of those where they can actually speak into your life and like a coach could. So hopefully that makes sense. So to me, it's like, the first question as it relates to a mentorship team is, how do you know what you need? The first is thinking about the roles. The second thing that I would say relative to finding mentors and developing, getting mentors kind of on your team is the simple question of, what do you want? And in what area of life? Um, when you seek out mentors, you ought to be looking for people who are where you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years in that particular area of your life. And obviously, if we talk about mentorship a lot of times in the professional sense, but we don't really think about, okay, who's my mentor relative to how my relationships? My wife and Lisa and I, do I have couples that I aspire to be like? And in our pet, and as I think about it, there are, even though I didn't think about it back then, there were couples that actually were kind of like model couples that Lisa and I kind of modeled our relationship after and kind of aspired to be. You can think the same thing spiritually, think physically. I mean, in my opinion, mentoring is not just about thinking about the professional area, which is where everybody focuses, but you should have mentors in all four areas of life that you're aspiring to be. Now, you may not have all the roles that I talked about because I was really just talking about graduate students and the professional area. But hopefully you get what I'm saying is that, in each of these areas, find someone who is where you want to be in 3 to 5 years, or even a shorter time frame, and basically that's what you're looking for. And you don't want mentors who have no fruit in their life. And this is one of the problems I think with arranged mentorships. They may or may not have the fruits of what you need in their life. And if you see no fruit, I mean, it's an empty tree, and you're not going to get anything from it. It may be a decent relationship, but you may not get any mentoring value out of it. So if you aspire to financial success, you should find someone who is a financial success and has those fruits in their life that you can garner. Just if you're constantly building relationships with everybody that is at your level in each of these four areas of life, you're not going to propel forward. You're going to be where, and the other way around is if you have, I'll say the other direction is if you're looking, if you're receiving mentorship from people that aren't at your quote unquote level in any of those areas, that's problematic too. Now, I'm very much an advocate that everybody should have someone that they're a mentee to, right? So somebody's mentoring them, but you ought to be mentoring someone else. But the things that you're getting and operating in are a little bit different in those areas. And ultimately, I'd say, to sum this up, is don't expect to get an apple from a pear tree. Be clear on what you want, and it doesn't have to be like an overt conversation necessarily, but kind of analyze, what is it in this relationship that I want? Because every relationship has some, and there should be an exchange. There should be more than just taking in a relationship. So I don't mean to imply that, but oftentimes in a mentoring situation, that's kind of the assumption or expectation, at least from the mentee. Now, I'll say, as you mentor people, you'll find that you oftentimes will gain as much knowledge, you'll gain as much insight, you'll get as much out of the relationship oftentimes as the person you're mentoring. And so that's kind of the thing that a lot of people don't recognize or realize, I think, is as we impart into other people's lives, there's an impartation that takes place with us too, relative. And there's also just a satisfaction, I think, in doing that. So how do you know what you need? Look at the roles and also look at where you want to go. And again, as I said in kind of my last video, kind of got a little snippy about it, but most people don't think about what they want. Sometimes they're afraid to even say what they want. So first thing, you have to know what you want. in each of the areas of your life. And then you can, one of the ways in which you can grow is by having a mentor who exhibits or has the things that you want. In other words, people that are bought up, basically models for you. So then the second thing is, okay, you find somebody who's kind of got that stuff in their life. How do you approach them? I mean, uh, how does this happen, right? I mean, sometimes I think we find ourselves in mentoring relationships and we don't have a formal conversation. It just kind of evolves in a natural way. And that's great when that happens. Um, but just relying on those non-strategic, that is, living life by default and just kind of taking those relationships as they come, you're going to be a lot less successful, and you're going to grow a lot less rather than being strategic in that. Take the relationships that bloom and grow kind of naturally, but also be strategic and create relationships when you see someone who is exhibiting something in their life that you would like to see part of your life. And it's not really about things and stuff. It could be, positive character attributes. It could be a variety of things. It's not just about things and stuff. Because oftentimes those things and stuff are not the most important things anyway. It's the character attributes, it's the abilities, it's, those kinds of things, right? So anyway, so how do you approach them? Well, first I'd suggest, particularly in a professional sense, is just meet with them and tell them, hey, I observed this in your life. This is something that I notice. And I mean, you could have a conversation about, oftentimes they'll probably know that about themselves. If they have any level of maturity at all, they'll recognize what those strengths are. And then just tell them that you aspire to kind of see those same strengths, those same abilities, those same things in your own life. And that you'd like to be able to have conversations about whatever that is, and talking about how it developed in their life. Was it purposeful, or was it just something that emerged, or, basically tapping in and try to figure out how they got from point A to point B, because most people don't get from point A to point B without effort. Things don't just fall off a tree like a ripe cherry. I mean, it just doesn't. I mean, there are some things that do that way, but more often than not, the positive attributes, the strengths that you see in people's lives, they may have an inclination for those strengths, but they've put effort into developing them. If you see someone that is physically fit, it is not because, they were just born that way and they didn't have to put any work into it. You see somebody that's musically talented, they may have had an inclination to music or to performance ability, but I guarantee there's a crap ton of work behind that. You see someone that's spiritually strong, I guarantee they've got hours and hours in private meditation, prayer, study, whatever, right? If you see a relationship that's strong relationships like marital relationships and those kinds of things don't just happen. They happen because people put investment and time into them. Relationships are work, and they're hard. And same thing, I mean, so it's like we naturally think, okay, in a professional life, if somebody exhibits certain characteristics, certain abilities, certain things in their life, and they rise to a certain level of position, oh yeah, they worked to get there. But we think if they're physically fit too, that they didn't put any work into it. That's just bull. Nothing in life comes easy except by work. I mean, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. To me, it's like, the work is what makes the difference, and so you have to choose to do that. So I get quit preaching here and move on. So once you've talked with somebody and you've kind of you've acknowledged that, you also have to kind of flip it around and say, I'd like your assessment of, how I can grow in that area, how I can develop these attributes, how I can develop these skills, how I can be where you are. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that conversation. I think it's totally fine to acknowledge the strengths in other people's lives. And one, it opens the door, and it just affirms for them, not that they need that affirmation, but it affirms that you see it. And then two, it creates a window for most people want to be able to pass on and leave a legacy. Assuming they have empathy for other people and care, they want to see, there be a legacy from of those kinds of things. And so most people are willing to serve as mentors. Now you have to be careful with how much time, right, your expectation is on the individual, right? You don't want to consume too much time from the state, because people that are successful in any of these areas of life are busy. But most people will take the time to kind of stop and share what they know, and depending on what role they might feel, like a rock star or superstar may not have as much time as someone else. But you take what you take what they're willing to give, and you consume it. You figure out how to use it in your life, and you move on. So, these are kind of my thoughts on mentoring. And I'm probably just scratching the surface, but these, as I sat down, I was kind of thinking and just journaling about what I might say about mentorship. And all I thought I was going to talk about were the roles from the article that I'd written a while back, but there seemed to be a whole lot more rolling around on the inside. So on these videos, it's like a lot of times I would encourage, it's like I don't want you just to consume this content and say, oh, great, and head knowledge. If you don't put this into practice in your life, I don't know why you're watching these videos. You're wasting your time. Just accumulation of knowledge is no good unless you apply it to your life. So my question is, what is the action that you can take? What's the takeaway here? So there's two things that you could do. Number one is I'd ask, what is your main takeaway here? Write it down, put it in your journal, put a note to yourself. A lot of times I'll send myself notes, things that I want to remember, particularly if I happen to be listening to a podcast or something as I'm driving. I'll narrate a note, an email to myself, and then I'll write it down in my journal. Essentially, I have multiple journals. I have one that's kind of like the whole life journal. It's what I use in the mornings. I have a journal that I've created specifically for the Grad Connection, where I write ideas and jot down things that I think I want to focus on. But break out your journal, write down somehow, whether it's electronic or physical, write down what's your takeaway from this. What can you apply to your life? And then the other question is, I want you to do something with it, whether that's share it with somebody else or figure out some specific action you're going to take to put this into your life. Maybe you've been struggling in your physical area and you really need to find someone who kind of succeeds in that area, and it's noticeable to you that they have a physical routine that works for them. Maybe you need to seek them out as a mentor, or maybe it's relative to a relationship that you have. Maybe you and your spouse, need some a marital relationship, or even, and it doesn't have to be marital, it could be whatever relationship to aspire to, or maybe it's spiritual, or maybe it's, I don't know what it is for you. But again, if you just listen to this and say, "Oh yeah, that's great," and don't do anything with it, I'm not sure why you're listening to it. If you don't put it to practice in your life, again, I come back to something I said in an earlier video, and it's I think it's great that people have different spiritual beliefs and all that, but if it doesn't make a difference in your life, I really don't care. If it doesn't make you more empathetic, it doesn't impact your life and make life better for those around you, I have to question, what's the value of that? So with this, I want to encourage you to build your team in whatever area of life you choose to focus on. I would also encourage you something that helps me, and it's not necessarily a feel good thing. I just would like to know that this content is impacting people, and so if you subscribe to YouTube channel, which is where the primary place for these videos are, if you're a grad student, because I'm realizing there are a lot of people that are consuming this content that aren't grad students, which is totally fine. So if you get value out of it, great. I'm happy for you. So, but if you are a graduate student, and I don't care whether you're at Purdue or somewhere else, I would encourage you to connect on Facebook in the the Grad Connection Facebook group that's private. If you're a grad student, please share this with other grad students, because a lot of times word of mouth, people, if you found value in this, share it with somebody else. Or if you found value in one of the other videos, share it with somebody. It's a way to take action on the content, right? And then lastly, ultimately you can connect with me on just as a connection on LinkedIn or as a friend on Facebook. That's your choice. But pretty much those are all the vehicles in which I'm kind of trying to disperse this content. So I hope you're finding value in it. I do, I know there's a lot going on right now with the pandemic and so forth, but it's good to see that things are starting to loosen up. And so with that, I do hope that you stay healthy, you stay happy, and you stay safe. And so have a great day. Thanks for watching.